Metaversity is in the Metaverse, and Yahoo says people treat crypto like an investment. Welcome to Metaversity, your first stop for everything in the new frontier of Metaverse and everything blockchain. I'm Chris with Kristen, and we'll explore and learn this new world together. So I think the first thing we should probably mention today is we're doing something new. We've been purely
exciting new times.
Yes, we've been purely a audio podcast. So now we're going to do the podcast in the Metaverse. Might as well do the very thing that we talk about all the time.
We're in a Metaverse, yeah.
We're in a Metaverse. So we're in Horizon's Workspace that we've kind of, you kind of put together for us.
Yeah, I did some, easy customization. Like I got our logo in here. Check it out. Looks great. I got us some stuff. I'm turning as I do this.
Yep, there might be a few bumps in the road on this episode.
Up here, and then on the back side, I've got a little bit of art behind me.
So I think it looks pretty good.
Yeah,
and of course, the great thing about this is, everything Metaverse, we can make it whatever we want. So, there'll probably be changes to us and the environment. And anytime we can do something a little different, we'll probably go ahead and do a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of exciting to add a visual component. So, our listeners can maybe get to know us a little bit better.
So,
yeah.
Excellent. So because this is kind of a new one for us, I don't know how long this episode will go, but we just have a couple topics to kind of...
Well, but there's a really big one, a nice, exciting one in there.
Oh, yeah. A very, very cool one. So, and it's not us being in the Metaverse. So the first one is Yahoo Finance had an article essentially saying that 12% or only 12% of Americans have ever purchased or used crypto. Now, 12%, what that equates to is about 40 million Americans that have done anything with crypto. And I can't really tell if they're saying that's from the article, if they were saying that was a lot or not a lot. There's actually been some other articles that have said it's been much higher than that, as much as 20 or 25%. So I'm not entirely sure where they came up with the 12%. But kind of a big part of the article was people don't use it as currency, that it's been treated as an investment.
Right. Well, I mean, we've had some discussions offline about this too. Like, I find it a little bit frustrating sometimes that, we've seen this. But in the grand scheme of things, like, people do that with regular fiat currency now,
Sure. I mean,
they trade on the exchange. Or they gain on the exchanges between currencies.
There are currency markets. But, it's not as prevalent, with fiat. And,
well, I don't know if it's a prevalency thing. I think it's actually like, I think it's probably just as prevalent. The problem is that the currency doesn't actually have a use as currency for a lot of things. So what you're seeing is only this exchanging currencies and trying to gain money or wealth through that.
Right.
And it's not balanced out by the usage side of it.
Right.
So, there's some of that going on. And that, when you have that makes the volatility go down too.
Well, yeah. And to kind of make us take a step back, it's, the whole idea of crypto was to have something that was completely decoupled from the stock market and other economies and things like that. So when you have a war in Ukraine, or you have a food shortage or food crisis, or you have other factors in the world, the idea with crypto is hopefully it wouldn't be affected. But kind of what you've seen, especially here with what people have kind of referred to as crypto winter, or the more recent crash of a lot of cryptocurrencies, is it seems very in line with what's happening in other markets. So, you have the stock markets going down and crypto's going down, and there's a lot of other issues with like food security and that kind of stuff. And it's causing that volatility that you would see, in other markets too, is affecting crypto, which is, for a lot of people, they go, well, it shouldn't be that way. It should be the exact opposite. But it's because it's used as an investment more than a currency right now.
Right.
So when and the reason for that, I think, is worth mentioning too. I kind of like, it's not exactly the same, but if you've ever gone to like a convenience store and there's that little sign that says, okay, if you're going to spend less than $10, we have to add a 20% credit card fee. And it's because, every time you use your credit card, there's a small little fee that the credit card company takes from the store, essentially, for allowing that transaction to happen. And it's not very much, it's not unlike cryptocurrency. When you buy or sell crypto, or you exchange it, there's a fee there.
Yeah, gas.
And it's expensive for a lot of currencies. And it depends on the currency.
For now, yeah.
Yeah, and there's technology coming that will hopefully drive those fees down.
Yeah, you see some people trying to tackle that now, to bring those charges down by doing different things like we've talked about in the past. Kind of layer sitting, like actually having your transactions like sit on the blockchain, or kind of collecting them so that then you can like run them all in at once,
right?
That kind of thing. But what's coming should be a better solution. It should bring energy costs for these transactions down. It should bring the actual like cost overall just down, So
right.
It's kind of exciting to think about, because it's coming, it's imminent at this point.
Right. It's coming and it's going to get better.
And there are other platforms like Solana that have already got some stuff figured out,
right.
But a little bit different take on, kind of the processing required in order to facilitate transactions.
Mm-hmm.
So
and that'll also help with the volatility that you see in the crypto markets too, when people start spending it and have a way to spend it. And you might say, well, there's some ways to do it. You definitely have that. Like you have BitPay, and with BitPay you get a card and you can use that in certain places to use your crypto. But that's not quite the end goal there, because what a lot of companies like BitPay are doing is, and we'll go way more in depth in this in a future episode, but they use something a lot of times like a liquidity pool, and they say there's no fees, but there still is. It's kind of hidden in the transaction a little bit,
right?
And the delay, and they make money off of the gap and all of that stuff. And we'll talk a little bit more about it, because not all liquidity pools run the same way either.
Well, yeah, and it's just one of those things anyway. Like if you're ever hearing somebody say, "Hey, this is free," you should reevaluate
right.
because it's not free.
Right.
Like, where
exactly.
is it actually coming from? You could be the product, as we've seen with other things like, Facebook or other social platforms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be hidden, like you're seeing with, was it Robinhood?
Yep, with Robinhood.
A lot less obvious. I wouldn't say it's necessarily hidden, but it's definitely a lot less obvious.
Right. And they a lot of times will, because, if you're experienced with cryptocurrency, you know what a liquidity pool is. So a lot of times they will kind of rebadge it as something else, so it doesn't quite sound like that either. Mm-hmm. But they're essentially doing that, and those are off-chain transactions that are happening. They're not on-chain transactions.
Right. So, Time Magazine.
Well, Time Magazine, it kind of goes together with this, and they talk about, you shouldn't use cryptocurrency as a currency because of how volatile it is, and
oh my goodness.
There's not much you can say to that, because essentially what's happening is, because of those fees and stuff, you could literally buy a soda with $1 of Bitcoin, for instance, and tomorrow that same amount of Bitcoin could be worth $30. And so that scares people away from using it as like a currency. But, as people make more and more transactions, I mean, the amount of transactions people are doing with cryptocurrency is so minimal right now.
Well, yeah, and it's because they're only using it like they're using it. They have this investment thing in mind, and there's no other way to really use it. I mean, we've talked a little bit about how we've seen like Bitcoin ATMs, mm-hmm. and there's a few places that are now accepting Bitcoin that will allow for, you to have a use that's beyond this investment thing.
Right.
Until we see a lot more of that, and that becomes, the main use of the currency, that it becomes a currency at that point. I mean, it seems obvious, but like people are upset and they don't like crypto because it's not being used properly right now. And until the technology comes far enough along in its adoption and usability, that's just how it's going to be.
Right.
Not for nothing, but like, we've talked a little tiny bit about decentralized apps or
DApps.
DApps, yeah, or DApps. But in the end, the reason why you're not really seeing a lot of movement with projects actually being able to make their decentralized apps is because the transactions are so costly.
Yeah.
And anybody that's a software developer, which of course we're very familiar with coming from, a software company, software development company, like we understand that, the reads and writes and stuff, like they're very numerous to be able to do any action inside of a software. And every single movement in that product creates a transaction in this decentralized world. And that like you have to bring the cost down of those transactions, because right now, like, let's say I want to, do one transaction on Ethereum. What is the current gas price for that? I mean, for a hot minute there, it was like over $100 worth just to move, Ethereum, one transaction.
Right.
So like that was ridiculous. And that's just that. So in a DApp world or DApp world, like, that's, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Like, things have to get a lot cheaper, and they are going to be.
But with those new technologies, like you're talking about, one of those with Ethereum, and we start moving away from, the current way of doing it to something that's more like proof of stake or maybe even proof of history, will cut the cost of a lot of those transactions quite a bit from where they are now. Yeah.
I think, at some point we should probably talk about that, but, because I don't know how many people are like super familiar with kind of that side of the technology.
Right.
And so it would be probably pretty helpful for us to break that down. But I know we have a really exciting thing to kind of talk about, and I'm kind of ready to get to that.
Ready to get to that one?
Like,
sure, absolutely. And, with this being kind of a new format for us too, I'm sure we'll have some things that we need to work out after we're done, recording all of this too. So we definitely want to get this out to everybody today, hopefully. So I think, and I agree with you, this one is super exciting. So Niantic has, Pokemon Go. Everybody has probably played Pokemon Go at some point.
Yeah, they have a few other apps. I mean, one of their original apps was Ingress that came before Pogo, and then they have Bloom, which is Pikmin, and then they have the Wizarding World app as well, which is Harry Potter. So like, they're doing good things. They have some other stuff, which is pretty cool.
Right.
It's all tied to this, but go ahead.
So they've created what they call the Visual Positioning System, or VPS. It's a kind of a nod to GPS. And it's going to make your augmented reality or AR experience grounded to actual physical locations instead of, the old school, you hold your phone up and it kind of inserts, the little monster or the dinosaur, and it's just kind of floating in the world. And maybe it's even smart enough to kind of put it on the ground, but it's not grounded to an actual physical location. You could bring up that same dinosaur anywhere else.
When you say grounded, but you mean like persistent. It's not persistent.
Yeah, it's like persistent. And it can't hide behind a tree or any of that stuff either.
Yeah, Niantic has been
throws it out there.
They've been teasing it, the occlusion, to the hiding behind the tree thing. They've been teasing it that for a while. I mean, when they bought 60.ai, they got that. They got occlusion.
Right. And it's actually going to be part of Niantic's broader Lightship SDK as well. And anybody who's wanting to start developing towards it, it's actually going to be free for the initial public beta period as well.
Right.
So it's going to be out there and available to those who want to start kind of playing around with it. Now, the best part about this is they basically have been, you have a lot of knowledge in this, but they've basically been sort of building the map of the world, if you will.
Yeah, that digital twin, they've been doing it for a while. I was really excited for Niantic to be doing this. I don't know, like I see kind of the big picture with them. They have a user base they've built. They've spent a lot of time kind of doing that. They decided like if you're going to build the digital twin of the 3D digital twin of the real world, you can come at this a couple of different ways. And the way that they chose to come at it was from build a user base of gamers standpoint.
Right.
Because honestly, they are some of your early adopters.
Oh, right.
Right.
Well, and build your digital twin one Snorlax at a time. I mean,
well, and they got a little bit of a leg up too, because these folks were spun out of Google.
Okay.
And they are part of the group that had a lot to deal with the Google Maps. So they kind of had some, springboards there, if you will. But yeah, I've been really excited about this for a while. They've been teasing, they just keep teasing it that they're going to have it. And now all of a sudden it's like, okay, this is feeling really real all of a sudden. So they've already got something that they did like a year and a half ago, I think it was they kind of released the ability to kind of 3D scan Pokestops and ingress portals.
Right.
And basically what those were these landmarks where in Pokemon Go, they were called gyms.
Right.
And so they were just landmarkers all over the world that were placed already, tested, and Niantic gained already a lot of data about like how popular those spots were, and they knew already kind of what they were. And they were able to leverage their players to 3D scan a map and create these point clouds of all of these popular locations, which has been, active now for a while. And surprisingly, there's still a lot of people actively playing in communities, the Pokemon Go game.
Right.
And so they already have 30,000 locations scanned and AR enabled at the launch of this VPS thing.
Yep. And actually, there's large parts of San Francisco, London, Tokyo, Los Angeles, New York City, and Seattle are some of the places that they've listed.
Yeah. And so the players are they're not even having to do anything very difficult.
No.
They're just recording videos of those locations. And what it's essentially doing is building they're using photogrammetry. They're pulling out stills from each one of, from the video, and they're taking each one of those and they're using them to build with photogrammetry a point cloud. And then, of course, because you have the images, you actually have textures too. So you have a 3D mapped version of that thing, whatever it is. And, I know a lot of like Pokestops and stuff are in popular places. Like we used to go to Disney Springs all the time when we played. And when they would have some community event, which they have lots of those, we would see easily hundreds of people just wandering around.
We've gone and played before, and
Absolutely.
there's just tons of people, and you'd have to get in little groups. And
it was a really great way to meet people that were also into the same thing you're into. So that's kind of great. But they aren't even using LiDAR yet. It's just the photogrammetry part.
Exactly.
I think once they get access to the LiDAR part and incorporate that in, which I don't know if they're waiting until you see a lot more devices than just iPhones with the LiDAR or what they're waiting on.
They haven't really talked too much about, they talked a little bit about how they've gathered the info now, but there's no telling what the, what's built into the SDK and what technology it can use going forward. And I mean, they may be hedging the bet a little bit that some of these AR glasses that everybody keeps talking about, even if they're just kind of early in, bleeding edge ones that may not have all the tech in them, will possibly be out here in the next couple years. And, if some of those have LiDAR or cameras in them, that's going to make it that much easier to build onto what they've already created.
Yeah. It's, so, we've spent a lot of time in the last few weeks anyway, talking about Meta and why, they're not the metaverse and whatever. And, VR, this is great. This is a really neat setup for us. It works well with our podcast and the kind of the theme of things. But the virtual side of it is not the only thing of the metaverse, right?
No, there's everything grounded in the real world and what augments the real world experience.
Yeah, so Niantic deeming themselves as a real world metaverse is what's exciting. Like, to me, that's where we're headed. We're going to be bringing all of this tech out of virtual environments and into our real world. And so, when Facebook releases Cambria and we all get our hands on that, and start playing Pokemon Go, like exactly. That combination, that's the money. You know what I mean?
That's when it gets, it's already exciting because we're seeing what's coming.
Yeah.
But, knowing where it's going to go is also super exciting too.
It is really exciting. And just to kind of give some visuals here, so this is kind of the cool thing about having the video that we're recording in our Metaverse meeting room. But I'm going to go to my computer and, no, go to the computer. Yeah. So
some of those little hiccups.
Yeah. So Niantic has released some kind of like concept art to help people, because in the end, when you are when you're just listening to this, it's really hard to get the visual. I mean, we've tried. We've spent a lot of time kind of describing this augmentation of digital with your real world.
Right.
And how very, very cool it's going to be. And while this may be specific visual aid is only helpful for people who play games, I think it starts to give kind of the concept. And so this first image that Niantic shared, it basically shows like a little blue guy and kind of the earth being changed around him with more blue digital stuff. And there's people on the street and there's buildings and all of that. So this is pretty cool. Let's see. It's a mix of using an actual mouse and then like using your hand. So it's a little strange for me. Let me see. I also shared a video. And what we see is this global map of AR geocaching waste spot thing. And what you're mapping, how it shows how you're mapping the world. And so what you see on your computer or your phone screen is turned into a point cloud. And I'm just going to rewind it one more time so everybody can kind of see that. But like the video, it like zooms in and you see somebody kind of mapping the world, this spot where it's a statue and like some weird kind of bench art. And you see it's kind of turned colors and then they pivot and now you can see the point cloud and then the textures overlaid on top of it. And that's what Niantic is generating.
Yeah, it's very awesome.
It's really, really cool. And then you can also see this other example where they made like a little video and they have, I don't know if you're familiar with the Niantic logo, but it's like a ship floating in the air with like a hot balloon thing over it and some Orby stuff anyway. And they're just showing a real world cityscape and the Niantic ship with some fake clouds kind of going through it, which is, just another visual example to kind of help you. And you see the real cloud or the fake clouds get overlaid over top of the real world. And then the Niantic ships
it's really
like
neat.
going in between ships. They go behind you so you get your occlusion and that kind of thing. So it's pretty neat. Niantic can do this because they're building this map. The hard part, of course, that they recognize is that in order to build the map and for it to be, useful, of course, they have to keep that map up to date.
Right.
And so they're coming at it, not just by getting players to do that stuff, which I'm sure they will continue to do, but they're also using a Wayfarer app. And they're using that to also scan new locations. And so, for example, like I don't have a Pokestop in my house, but I definitely would think it very useful to have my house mapped in some way. Now, I don't know that this is necessarily what they're using it for, but I'm just giving you an example, because if I want to have a future where I can use my AR headset, my mixed reality headset, and I can actually bring digital things into my real world and augment my everyday life, I'm going to need the maps of those locations as well. And so the Pokestops and the Ingress, portals and things don't get that job done.
Right.
But instead, if I have this, like their Wayfarer app, for example, you can scan new locations with that. They're planning, actually, I guess they've already released Campfire too.
Yeah, Campfire's out, and that's a local, a location-based social media network using a lot of that same technology. But the idea behind it is it's using your list of friends from Niantic. And if they opt in, you'll be able to see, where they're located. And they also built some stuff in that allows you to essentially join nearby game experiences, or you can set up groups to go play together, and they can RSVP and all kinds of neat things like that. But that's also still going to be very, very location based, using some of that same technology. They don't need quite the map, but you'll be able to see where people are and be able to pull people into your gaming experience.
Yeah, it's kind of a callback to an app they used to have called Field Trip, where you would have this app and it would ping the users they were near an interesting landmark that had a backstory or something. But yeah, and then they're going to include Campfire's functionality. Eventually they'll let other development, like third-party apps, be able to use that stuff too. So it's like, enabling a social discovery layer to the games.
Yep. Which is going to be really neat.
Which is really cool. So when you start thinking about like what this world is going to look like, it's, we've talked a lot about like connectivity and being able to interact with others in a whole new way. That's what this is. And, Niantic's really been all about that. Get out in the world and go explore and play and meet people and all of that. And of course they want to do that in safe ways. And so they're trying to find the ways to do that.
Well, and that's really great too, because it gets people outside and, out from behind their desk and get a little bit of exercise and fresh air and all of that stuff too.
Yeah. Anyway, I think this is some pretty cool stuff. I think I had one more thing to show, and I'm looking.
Yeah, go ahead and
pull
it up really fast.
This was the Campfire thing. And what you can see is it looks a lot like, kind of like a mix between Snapchat maybe and like, Facebook-ish. So you get like heat maps and stuff, which is pretty cool. So anyway, I think I hope people like are just as excited about this as I am, honestly. I think it's just going to be really fun. There was this,
and when you hear people that aren't or don't understand it, they don't understand maybe Web3 or they don't understand the Metaverse and stuff like that. I actually, it's kind of funny. There's this article that I saw about the first time Bill Gates went on Letterman. And Letterman was grilling him on the internet, and this is back in 1995, and the internet was still
a baby.
Very new. And Letterman was basically trying to get Bill Gates to talk about what it is, and he's like, it's this place where all this information is going to be available to you at your fingertips and do all this stuff. And Letterman was basically almost making fun of him on public television about this being kind of this kind of silly thing that's never going to catch on and all of this other stuff. And it's kind of funny because I feel like sometimes, we know where it's going, but there's a lot of people out there that think it's just another virtual reality app, or it's going to be another game, but it's really going to be a whole lot more. Like it'll be one of those things that in 10 years or 20 years, it's another one of those that people are going to go, I don't know how I lived without it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I could have probably in 95 lived without the internet, but I couldn't live without it now.
Yeah, totally.
So,
well, on that note, go check this stuff out for yourself. Don't just take our word for it.
Yep.
Get excited because you're genuinely excited about the technology.
Yep.
And don't forget to subscribe to us, leave us a review, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Comment, everything else. So thanks for joining us, and I hope you like this new experience.